Milliken Dixon,
Here.
and Mrs. Ortiz.
Present. I have a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Arndt,
Yes.
Ms. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
and Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any correspondence?
Yes, I received communications on the topics of bus student and staff issues. These were all either addressed or given to the appropriate personnel to address. I also received a letter that I would like to share from the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society regarding two of our high school students, Hannah Costello and Haley Booth, who took part in the Student Visionaries of the Year program. So they, along with their team, Charitable Changemakers, raised $2,378. And in the letter, they highlighted that this year, 33 high school candidate teams came together and raised over $821,000 towards their mission. So again, I just want to recognize and congratulate our students for being a part of that and raising the money.
Agenda modifications?
Yes, there's a modification to P9C. There's a new number 11, and then the old 11, 12, and 13 are now 12, 13, and 14. So next, Mike Candela, who is the superintendent from the Ashtabula County ESC, will be giving a brief presentation on information regarding the upcoming Happy Hearts Levy. Welcome.
Can you hear me okay? Yes. Thank you, Dr. Treharn, for inviting me, and also board members for giving me a few minutes of your time this evening. I'm here on behalf of all the Happy Hearts students in Ashtabula County and their families. This evening, I believe you'll be presented with a resolution to consider renewing the current Happy Hearts levy that we have that helps us operate the units throughout the county. This levy is vitally important to provide these services for these students throughout the county. We have 15 different units, and we're looking to add another unit that provides very specific services to these kids. Not only do we provide an appropriate academic setting, but we also provide a tremendous amount of support services, whether it be speech therapies, whether it be occupational therapy, whether it be nurses' aid support, or even nurses. These students are very involved. They're the most vulnerable students in our community, and it's been my mission the last 4 years to make sure they're taken care of. I believe that that your support will help us to continue to do that. This levy that would come up in November would be a renewal, and it'll provide valuable supports needed for those programs. We also, of those 15 programs, 4 of them are housed right here in the Geneva district to support not only the Geneva students, but any of the other students in the county that can or may attend those programs. So they're open to all the students, even though they're housed here. It's been a great experience to have the units here. They participate in a lot of the activities that go on in the school, and it's a very good setting for those students. So as you go through your process tonight and determine whether you want to support that levy, I would strongly encourage you to do that. Our students need that support. They deserve it, and they need us to show, provide us with the facts that all things are possible with these children. They need our help and support, so I appreciate your consideration as you move forward this evening. And if you had any questions, I'd be glad to address them. No questions. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Candela.
Okay, next up on the agenda, we have to discuss the lease options for the current board office that houses the treasurer and staff on Eagle Street. So the owner of the location has presented us with a rent schedule. Did you want to? Okay. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can you on the speaker? No. Jamie, I don't know if your microphone's working.
It's not working.
Just bring it closer.
Bring it closer. Okay.
So I was contacted by Sean Neese of Renew Partners, the owners of the property at South Eagle Street, basically the whole corner. And as you know, our lease expired on April 10th. So if we stay there, we need to enter into a new lease. And he presented this as $7,500 per quarter, where we've been paying $4,059.12 per quarter. So if you recall, our first lease, we had 5 years where we did not pay anything. We stayed there for free. And the second 5 years began at $15,000 a year, payable quarterly, and it increased 2% each year over the life of the second 5 years of that lease. So now that that's up, his intention, he told me, was they want to sell that house now. So they can't do that until we're out of there, so they really were hoping that now that we weren't going to do anything there on that property with the Terry's building, that we would be out of there. When I told them we needed some time before our new building would be ready, this is their offer for us to stay there.
I'm sorry, Kevin, how much is it, was it currently? The agreement amount, you said 4,000 something?
Year five of the second 5 years was $16,236.48 annually. So we're basically paying $4,059.12 a quarter, or $1,353.04 a month.
Too many.
Now we're
What's the
paying
4,000 number? $4,059.
$4,059.12
All right, and that's
a quarter,
quarterly.
which would be $1,353.04 a month.
Okay,
So now basically they want to charge us $2,500 a month, or $7,500 a quarter. And then each quarter after June of 2024 would have a 2% increase for the quarter, but we wouldn't be there too long past that if we weren't out by
we're
then.
counting on Hammond for that, right? Get us out of there. Okay, so is that our only option? I mean, what would we do with the people working in that building if we didn't accept this agreement?
And in addition to the treasurer's office, we also have our 2 psychologists
Right.
in that building, or working out of that building.
So I had asked Dr. Treharn if there's room in this building or any other that we could temporarily house all those folks. And I think the answer is maybe. I don't know what the answer is. So that's my question. What do we do if we don't accept these terms? Anybody have any ideas?
We don't have space in any of our buildings for, we don't have space for any of these people in our buildings? I mean, I guess that's your question, right, Marty?
That's my question.
And I don't have an answer,
Can we just
so.
move them for 1 year-ish, a year and a couple months, into somewhere else?
My personal opinion is that I think the hardest people to relocate would be the treasurer and his assistants. And I don't know that we have space for them, but I would think that we would have space for the psychologists. Okay.
Can we ask the administrators if they have room in their buildings? I mean,
Sure.
any ideas on where we can house these folks? So we don't have to pay all this? I'm sorry. I apologize. I don't think it's very loud. Is that better if I do this? There we go. Okay, so administrators, any ideas would be helpful. Anywhere we could house Kevin and his staff and also the psychologists?
Can you answer?
what is the condition of the house on the hill?
Yes and no.
What do you mean?
It's not in any condition to put people in, is it?
No.
It's in no condition to put people in, I don't
Okay.
think. Tony, can these go louder so I don't have to hold it? I think we should look in, how long do we have?
Well, as
The
we
lease is
said,
already
our
up.
lease expired on April 10th, so we're past that. So we either need to do something or have someplace else to go.
So I think at the minimum, we would want to consider the mid-April to June 30th, and continue on with that. If there are other spaces, and I wasn't quite sure because I was being asked a question over here, if they all responded or not, but to have all of them move and be in one location, I'm not sure there is room unless we were going to displace others elsewhere, which I'm not sure that they're able to do.
Okay, so, Dr. Treharn, I'm sorry, I got distracted. So you're saying that you think there is room for psychologists, but not for Kevin and his staff?
No, what I'm saying is to bring all 6 people over, if you're wanting them all in one location, I think that would be a challenge.
Sure.
Unless you were wanting to displace others elsewhere, which probably isn't the best option.
And so is six the treasurer staff, or is that everybody in that
Well,
building?
there's 4,
The total,
Okay.
and then there are 2
there's no-
psychologists that are
Right.
over there as well.
So there's no
6
reason
people
that the
total.
psychologist and the treasurer have to be in the same place, right?
No,
I mean, no. So we're not talking about trying to find one place for 6 people. We're trying to find 2 places, one for 2 people and one for 4 people? Okay.
If that is an option, yes, that could be an
All right.
option.
So, I don't know.
Okay, so, Mr. Lillie, can I ask do we have to sign on to all of this right now through June of '24, or can we take this in increments?
well, basically, Tony's, basically it would be month to month.
Regardless.
But they want to pay by quarter. So if we got
Okay.
out of there early, then they would give us a refund. So we're not locking into, like we did before, a 10-year, a 5-year, or even a year-to-year lease.
Okay.
He said we can go month to month.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we can take a look at this as what Dr. Treharn said. We can look at the mid-April to the June 30th date, say that we keep everybody there for that period of time, we pay that price, and sometime within that time frame, we reassess our situation to see if we can relocate the 6 people in that building to other buildings so that starting in July, we would not incur these costs.
My only concern with that, and I really disagree with that, is June 30 is the school's year end. I do not want to displace our treasurer and his staff when he's preparing for year end. I think that's a really bad idea.
Kevin, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, ideally, one move would be the best. When that building is done, then we move to that building. To make 2 moves with hardware that we have and everything, and that we're running payrolls twice a month, or 2 to 3 times a month, accounts payable. Something could break that up if we have to move multiple times.
Okay, so we know we're in the position we're in right now because the fire marshal went in there and basically condemned that building. There's been no modifications, no improvements, nothing done to the building. So
Correct.
we know that our employees are working in an unsafe building. I understand what you're saying, and I concur with what you're saying. Best case scenario would be to only move one time.
Correct. And Tim Parks from the fire department has been in periodically to check, on the progress. He knows that we're moving forward. We've changed, one of the things that they cited before is that we had a lot of extension cords. We had air conditioners that were plugged into power strips. We don't have that anymore, plugging them in direct to the wall. But the problem is, that house is not set up with the outlets, for technology right now. So that was one of the things that was a problem. So if we were to move anywhere else, we would need proper outlets and so on so that we could plug in. But I'm just saying, ideally, obviously, it would be easier to move one time.
Okay, so your recommendation to us as a treasurer is that we stay where we're at right now. You stay there until the completion of the new board office and then move one time.
That's correct.
And that the fire marshal will allow us to do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the fire department, and so far Tim Parks hasn't, knowing that we are working towards getting out of there, knowing the changes that have been made and removing people from some areas that were an issue, that we're okay for now.
Is that what is best for those employees that work in that building right now
We've
also?
worked in that building for a long, long time.
I understand that, but is it best to leave them there until the new board office
I
is
think
done?
that they all would like to stay there until the new board office is ready. Yes, they've all expressed that.
Kevin, does Tim Parks and the fire department know that it will be another
Yeah, they
another
know the
year?
schedule.
Okay. Well, if that's what you and your staff want to do, I think we shouldn't mess with it.
I agree.
Do we have a motion?
I move that we follow this lease schedule, rent schedule from Renew Partners, and we can do it on a month-to-month basis, but we stick with this schedule in that building until the staff can move one time.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call?
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler?
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
And Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler?
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
And Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
Motion to approve the treasurer's financial report?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Lillie has some information for you.
I did distribute to the board a record of real estate advances and settlements. This year was a little strange in that we actually had 5 distributions on our real estate tax collections. If you recall, at the last board meeting, I reported that collections were coming in very slow. Obviously, the bills went out late, but it was thought that at some point it would catch up. But you can see by March 10th, we had a very small portion of our total real estate collections at that point. So the county auditor agreed to do a 4th distribution, basically a 4th advance, but they had a problem with their software, and they gave districts, and I don't know if this was all districts in the county, but it was the majority of districts, more than what we were to receive. So you see the settlement that was received on 4/11, which was one of the latest settlements that we've had in the last, 27, 28 years. So we had to pay back $119,850.21 because of that overpayment, which was done today. But in the end, you can see the first half subtotals. That subtotal for the first half of 2023 represents a 5.3% increase compared to last year's 3.55% increase. So property valuations, have remained very stable and increased, and collections are increasing right along with that.
I have a question.
Sure.
So typically, it looks like they disperse January, February, March, and you said they agreed to do this 4th disbursement. I mean, with the amount of disbursement for there, how could they not have agreed to do that? Would they have held that until the second half?
That was their original, no, not till second half, till settlement. So generally, you in the law, any public entity that is receiving tax collections can request an advance and in writing to the auditor's office. And when they do that, the auditor is obligated to pay up to 90% of collections available at that time. To make it easier on the county auditor and on school districts, a long, long time ago, we had worked out an arrangement with the county auditor for all school districts to receive advances at the end of January, basically January 31st or the last business day in January, February 14th, and March 7th, if they weren't ready to settle. So you can see that in most of these distributions, January, then February, then March in most cases. And then we wait for settlement. Settlement's usually small because we've received most of the money collected by the county treasurer and turned over to the county auditor before the middle of March.
Okay.
In most cases here, you see a few late settlements towards the end of March, but generally it hasn't rolled into April since 1999.
Yeah.
And that's 4 auditors ago. This year, there was a new treasurer. This was her first collection cycle, and the tax bills did go out late, but generally, if you look at this, you see anytime there's a smaller first half settlement, they start getting larger with the second advance in February, and then increase in March, and then the settlements are small. But this was strange, and because March was a 3-pay month, most of the school districts were counting on that money to come in that hadn't come in, and that's why when presented with that, the county auditor agreed to that 4th advance, but they had some sort of glitch that they miscalculated, and so they paid out too much money, and then the districts had to reimburse them or pay them back for the overage.
Okay.
Has that ever happened before?
No, this was a first.
Thank you.
Sure.
Roll call?
Mrs. Metzler?
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
And Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
A motion to approve the invoices?
Move.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
And Mrs. Metzler?
Yes.
Okay, you have the informational items, the current investments, and there's a few donations listed.
Few donations, and you can see on the current investments that rates have increased. Now they dropped a little bit. We had the ability to get one 5-year at 6%, but right now the best you can do is about 5.25, 5.3. But we are seeing much better interest than we had earlier in the year.
The legislative report?
Thank you, Mrs. Ortiz. I apologize in advance. It's a little bit long. Our Congress has been busy. So, SB 1, of course, is still in the works to form the DEW, the Department of Education and Workforce. They're hearing proponent and opponent testimony at this time. The State Board proposed a resolution regarding the board's commitment to preserve transparency and public participation in Ohio K-12 education. Excuse me. The resolution is in response to the legislature's discussion on the role and responsibilities of the State Board. So in other words, Congress is debating whether or not to close down the State Board and replace it with the DEW, and the State Board is bringing its own ideas to the table. The biennial budget is still, Governor DeWine's biennial budget is still in the works. It's House Bill 33. The Senate Education Committee amended Senate Bill 49, which would enact the Religious Expression Days Act. So it would require school boards to adopt a policy providing students with religious accommodations for up to 3 days. The amendments make the following changes. Requires a district or school to include in its policy regarding absences for religious expression to permit students to attend interscholastic events or other extracurricular activities on days the student was otherwise absent due to religious expression. Meaning it'd be an exception to the rule of if you're not in school, then you don't participate in, say, the basketball game. So this bill would make religious days an exemption. So if you miss school for Passover, let's say, you could still play in the basketball game. It would require a district or school to include religious observations in the non-exhaustive list of major religious holidays and festivals for which a student may be excused under the bill, and specifically adds Good Friday and Passover to the non-exhaustive list of major holidays. It would add that excused absences may not be unreasonably withheld or denied for any religious holiday, festival, or observation. So in other words, we already, of course, honor students' religious beliefs and practices, and this puts more detail into the Ohio Revised Code to make sure that school districts are doing that. The Senate Education Committee held a third hearing on SB 29, which would enact laws pertaining to technology providers for education records and data. The bill would require school districts to make public certain information regarding the technology providers they use. The bill also limits what school districts can access or monitor on a school-issued device. The House Primary and Secondary Education Committee held a second hearing on HB 11, which would establish the Backpack Scholarship Program to begin operating for the 23-24 school year and repeal the Ed Choice Scholarship Pilot Program effective July 1st of 24. The committee heard from proponents of the bill. This bill is similar to the other bill in the House, HB 11, called Parent Education Freedom Act. The testimony included some interesting statistics, I thought. 90% of students in Ohio attend a public school. The new income level would be expanded to 400% above poverty, and that level would include 80% of Ohio students. So 90% of our students already go to public school, and raising the income requirement for the Parent Education Freedom Act, excuse me, that would cover 80% of our students. So in other words, 80% of our students would qualify financially to be able to choose a charter or non-public parochial school to go to instead of their district that they are residents of. The Senate Finance Committee held a third hearing on SB 6. This is the one that would prohibit the state teachers retirement system and school employee retirement system, among others, from making investment decisions for the primary purpose of influencing environmental, social, and corporate governance policies. So STRS and SERS invest your money. It's a portfolio, and you can choose if you want to do high risk, low risk, et cetera, and then at the end when you cash it out, it's whatever the stock market was saying. And so that what this legislation would do was prevent them from investing in anything that's inherently political, I guess. Nothing environmental, nothing social, so that it's purely businesses and that sort of thing that they invest in. Testimony was heard on HB 103, which would establish the Ohio Social Studies Standards Task Force to develop new social studies academic standards for use for beginning use with the 24-25 school year. Testimony continued for HB 117, which would eliminate retention under the third grade reading guarantee, expand the grades for which intensive reading intervention is provided, and expand the inclusion of phonics in learning standards. And this goes hand in hand with a big part of Governor DeWine's budget proposals, because he wants to require, I think this is later in my report actually, but he wants to require school districts to use the science of reading curriculum that he is a proponent of. And so the first step in that is he's going to deliver a survey that would find out which school districts are already using this science of reading curriculum. And so then they would just be checked off the list as they're already doing it. And then he would require and fund the rest of the districts in Ohio to use that same phonics-based curriculum. I have a federal update today. The Federal House Education and Workforce Committee Republicans advanced 2 GOP proposals. The first aims to codify a Parents' Bill of Rights, similar to the one that Ohio is working on, that would place new requirements on districts and schools to provide access and voice to parents. The committee is now sending it to the floor for a vote, so we may soon have a federal Bill of Rights. The panel additionally approved a bill that would prohibit transgender women from playing on sports teams consistent with their gender identity as opposed to their birth gender. President Biden put out his fiscal year 24 budget. It includes $4.2 billion with a B dollars for the 2 largest formula grant programs, Title I and IDEA. So mental health support for students. Title I provides financial assistance to local education agencies for children from low-income families, and IDEA is intended to support early intervention and special education for infants, toddlers, and children and youth with disabilities and their families. Meanwhile, a number of big programs see no proposed growth in the plan, such as many of the school improvement programs, innovation and improvement programs, and investments in after-school programs. So real quickly, I attended 2 conferences this month about legislation, and in these, it's more than like just the facts. I spoke with Mrs. Metzler about this earlier. I deliver a lot of times just the facts in my report, and I try to editorialize a little bit to make sure that everybody understands the relevance of the bills that I'm talking about. And that's what they do in depth at these conferences that I attend. And I go so that I can learn how all these pieces of legislation actually impact Geneva and other schools. So I was lucky enough to hear Governor DeWine in Columbus. He came to my conference and was the keynote speaker. And he spoke a lot about his budget and the things that are education in there. He's got a lot of budget allocations for pre-K. He wants to expand Help Me Grow. He wants to further link up with Dolly Parton Imagination Library and make sure that every child, 0 to 5 in the state of Ohio, is accessing those books. That's a once a month book, I believe, that you can get for your little kids. For K through 12, he's emphasizing overall wellness, physical wellness, and also mental health. By all accounts, DeWine's budget does follow the Cupp-Patterson Fair School funding plan. The Ohio House also just updated the Fair School funding plan with fiscal year 22 numbers. I guess this has been a point of contention between he and Congress that we were working on continuing that funding plan, but without current numbers, and so it was sort of futile. So now we're using current numbers, and so the 2 branches of our government are going to move forward with that plan. He also spoke about literacy. He talked about 40% of Ohio 3rd graders not being reading proficient. His budget wants to pay for phonics curriculum. I talked about all that already. The budget proposal also includes training the teachers who are not currently using the phonics program to get trained in doing that so that they can implement that. He talked a lot about career tech. He believes there are not enough spots for the students who want technical education. So his budget includes a one-time grant to school districts to expand Ohio's technical schools to accept more students. What he wants to do is for districts to use this money and places like ATEC to use this grant to offer more classes, more teachers, build more classrooms if they need to, so that every student in Ohio that wants to pursue vocational education while they're still in high school can do that, and that places like ATEC don't have to turn away students because they don't have the space. During next session, the governor intends to support legislation to increase teacher pay and include student teachers on the district's salary schedules. So he wants to legislate how much we pay our teachers and that we pay our student teachers. So that's coming up. And now real quickly, a couple of recently introduced bills that are important to education. HB 127, sponsored by our own rep, Sarah Fowler Arthur from Ashtabula. This would revise the law regarding home education of children but I don't have any specifics yet. HB 139, which would increase the penalties for assault if the victim is acting as a sports official or the assault is committed in retaliation for the victim's actions as a sports official, effectively increasing penalties for assaulting referees and umpires and folks of that nature. HB 140 would increase penalties for passing a school bus and allow the use of cameras on school buses. And finally, SB 87, which would establish the day of each general election as a legal holiday for which government employees would receive paid leave. I'm done. Thank you all. As always, if you have any questions, shoot me a text or an email, and I'd be happy to help you understand all this. Thank you all.
Thank you. The ATEC report?
Yes, I've mentioned in prior reports that ATEC has been investigating the possibility of expanding the facility due to the increased number of students on waiting lists for the acceptance into some of the programs. And as Marty just mentioned, the governor has noticed and he wants to help take care of the overflow problem that we have. Yesterday at our, in the discussions going on in Columbus, however, the original budget that called for $200 million for new facilities for ATEC, or for technical schools, and another $100 million for the equipment to put into these schools. As of today, the facility amount was cut in half to $100 million, but discussions are ongoing, and hopefully the number will be reinstated or at least increased from where it is now. Luckily, we got a head start because, as it is written, ATEC needs to submit a proposal which includes student data to show the need for expansion, including wait list information, application data, and so forth, evidence of state and local labor market with information from the Ohio Means Jobs, evidence of business and industry support, such as letters of support with commitment to hire students. All of this is due by May 5th. A lot of this data has already been collected. Our talks with the architects started in January, and they have done a campus walkthrough, and in addition, the school has formed a committee that's already met to review the enrollment data and various guidelines. In June, applications will be funded, will be selected by Columbus, and by summer, all plans and blueprints need to be in place so the construction can be started as soon as possible. And anybody that has done any construction knows this is an extremely accelerated schedule here. Okay, as many as 90 entities are expected to apply for funding, and there is a push to reach as many career centers as possible. For example, one county is looking for $35 million renovation and expansion. They currently have 18 programs and serve 728 students, but there are no academic classes. All the students are bused to the tech center after they attend academic classes at their home school. Most of the students eat their lunch on the bus from their home school to the tech school. There's no cafeteria, so maybe that's part of their plan. We're hoping to submit a request for $4 to $5 million, hoping that the smaller amount will have a better chance of success. You can divide 100 by 4 or 5 a lot more ways than you can when you're dividing by 35. Officially, it's spring, so they say, and it's almost time for the ATEC plant sale. The horticulture department has their handiwork on sale every spring. It will be held on Thursday and Friday, May 11 and 12, and then the full week of May 15 through 19, from 11 a.m. until 2 p.m. There are hanging baskets and planters of various sizes, succulents, sunflowers, herbs, such as basil and cilantro, and annuals, perennials, perennial food plants like strawberries and rhubarbs, and standard and unique vegetable varieties and tropical plants. The plants can also be ordered online. And finally, the senior awards presentation, which is tech school graduation, will be held on May 26th at Lakeside High School. And that's my report.
Thank you.
Moving on to the reports. First this evening, we will begin with Mr. Mollahan.
I still can't figure out this order. I know it does. Mollahan, where do you work?
Wherever you'd like.
Hello? Can you hear me? Okay.
There we go.
Not to draw attention to myself, I'm going to walk this way as everybody else does. This isn't embarrassing. My fault. So in the board report tonight, I've mentioned the dates of our state testing. We're in week 2 of our state testing, which will be wrapping up this weekend, or not this weekend, but this week. And then we'll be entering into some of the math portions Thursday and Friday, and then getting into the rest of the math next week. So we'll be finishing up ELA this week. 7th and 8th grade track is off and running. Please pardon the pun.
Pun intended.
Sure. Track coaches have said they've had a very successful season up to this point. Both teams, both boys and girls, are 2-1 on the season. They have set literally hundreds of PRs, which is personal records, so athletes improving on their times on a daily basis. And they have even broken multiple school records already. They have set new school records in girls shot put, both the boys and girls 4x800 relays and the girls mile. They will compete in the CVC meet on Monday the 24th. 7th and 8th grade boys tennis is also in full swing. Pardon the pun. Coach Griffith said the boys are working hard and getting better every day. Excitement in the tennis program is growing, as this is the largest roster he has had for boys up to this point. So good luck to boys tennis the rest of the way as well. GMS parent group, we met recently. We are getting into the beginning discussions of our field day, which last year was our first time doing it, which was a huge success. So we are beginning those discussions to have that planned for the end of the school year. Many teachers this past month have done a lot of really cool things in class. Mrs. Clemens did a shamrock sugar cookie exercise for St. Patrick's Day. Miss Pierce did a cool baseball leapfrog activity to help the kids review for the state math test. It also included a picture of yours truly looking silly on the wall. Mrs. Junker had 11 of her creative writing students enter work to be published in the Young Writers competition. So this is the most that she's had at any one time that has been accepted for publication. So Charlotte Hart, Tessa Giantonio, Oliver O'Lear, Ava Luoma, Jackson Dodd, Morgan Aiken, Morgan Hildebrand, Molly Frazier, Bryce Balconis, Ellie Gersper, Gia Palmisano, and Zyla Barlow. Miss Sabin, she, with her advisory class, her students wanted to do something special, to do something to talk about, like philanthropy. So the class came up with some ideas of an activity that they wanted to do, and they settled on doing a food drive, which the class presented to me. I came down, listened to their proposal, and of course gave them my go-ahead, yes, let's do this. So that wraps up this week. I've included the grade reports for the third 9 weeks, straight A's, honor roll, and merit roll. It's always a pretty tight competition between the 6th grade and 8th grade in terms of straight A's, and for this 9 weeks, the 8th grade edged out the 6th graders by 3. The last thing I wanted to bring up and talk about was at the middle school last Thursday, the 13th, we experienced a situation that caused me to put the building into lockdown. From the moment that I was made aware of a potential threat to the time that I put the building into lockdown, Officer Cooper and the rest of the officers from Geneva PD came into the building. To the time that we investigated, determined that the threat was not plausible, to going back into a normal schedule was approximately 18 and 19 minutes from start to finish. Truthfully, very scary moment. We have drills, we plan all the time. A drill, things look perfect. This is what we plan for. When the real thing happens, even if it is something that is determined to not be credible, everybody's heart gets pumping. And what I am most proud of is our teachers and our students, the way that they responded. And better yet was the conversation that I had with parents throughout the week as well. I had students who were going home and not just talking to their parents about concerns that they had, but talking to their parents about ideas and things that they saw the way to maybe help make things better. The number one thing we do in our business is that if we experience something, we always talk afterwards to realize what can we do better. I will tell you myself in self-reflection, meeting with my teachers the next day, we found 4 or 5 things that we immediately would change if we ever have to do this again. But the communication from parents calling into me saying, hey, Mr. Mollahan, you know, my child came home, they brought this to my attention, I wanted to bring it to yours. I welcome that because this is the way that we make everything better. I will tell you that I never claim to be perfect, but if I'm ever going to make a mistake, I'm always going to make a mistake and err on the side of caution because your children that walk through our doors every day, I treat as if they are my own because as a parent myself who have kids that go to school, scariest thing in the world would be to get a notification from my school's principal saying, or from my children's principal saying, going into a lockdown. So trust me, anything that we could have done better, we're already talking about how to do that. But if I'm going to err, I'm always going to err on the side of caution. So thank you.
Mrs. Brzenko? I don't think mine's on.
What's up with that? I'm telling you.
Good evening. I want to first start by saying thank you to all the teachers. Whether you're kindergarten, preschool, first, second, all the way up. We cannot be successful at our testing stage without you. So I thank you. There's a lot of hours going into this, a lot of hard work, overtime, a lot of collaboration. So thank you to everyone in the district because every single one of you play a part in us being successful. And on that note, we just ended our last extended learning session for grades 3, 4, 5. This started in March and lasted until April 11th. And we had 27 students that attended. Some could only come on one day, some on another day. But I thank the parents. You're going the extra mile, helping us, transporting your students to from every day. So I appreciate your help with that and your dedication to what we are doing. Mrs. Howard, Mrs. Cozy, Mrs. Nappy, and Mrs. Nugent, they worked the extra time to make sure that they were prepared. They met with the teachers that it would be affected, and they did a wonderful job collaborating, so I'd like to thank them for that. Another activity students participated in was Pajama Day. The Geneva High School Interact Club sponsored a Pajama Day on Thursday, April 6th. Students donated $1 and could wear jammies to school, which is a huge deal, just let me tell you. Do you ever want kids to do something? Let them wear jammies to school. All the proceeds collected were used to go to the Akron Children's Hospital. I'd like to thank Corinne Ball. This is the first time that she's asked all 3 of us to participate in an event that they were putting in. We were thrilled to do that. We talked. We were like, yeah, we're all in. So keep asking us to do stuff because we love to collaborate with the middle school and high school as well. Lastly, with some help from the Asheville County Educational Service Center, they were able to put together the wheelchair swing. We were missing some parts. We weren't sure how to do that. They put it together, and the money used for the swing came from the 21-22 ARP IDEA Early Childhood Special Education Grant. So that was something we got at the end of the year, and we bought the swing in the fall, and I did include some pictures of the swing being used, and it is phenomenal. I go out there, and I have like little tears in my eyes. I'm just so excited to see them out there swinging in their wheelchairs next to the others.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
Also attached is my monthly Soaring Eagles. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Porcello?
Thank you, Amy. All right. Much like others have noted, state testing is underway. No different in the special education department. Alternate assessment has been going on for a few weeks and actually wraps up on the 21st. Teachers have been working hard to make sure students, both homebound and in our buildings, have participated as fully as they can in that. The 3 elementary schools are working on their bronze award for PBIS. Monday coming, we will have our final meeting
to make sure that our binders are all put together properly and ready to submit for May 1st. I can't express how happy I am. It's been a lot of work and a lot of stress. And lastly, I would like to thank the special ed secretaries, and any of those secretaries that work on special education. Tanya Varquette, Cheryl Sedmak, Tammy, drawing a blank, Jennifer Kirby, Deb Hurst, and Bobby Horvath, working on EMIS, working on scheduling meetings. It's a lot of work, and without that team of people, our department would really be slowed down and struggle with making sure things happen on time. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Weatherholt.
We have a lot to be thankful for. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Jen Crosley. She was named Northeastern Ohio Athletic Director of the Year. We have been blessed at Geneva to have her services here for the past 15 years. Congratulations, Jen. We have a basketball superstar with us also tonight. Congratulations to Nancy Barbeau for being inducted into the Ashtabula County Hall of Fame as a head coach. Congratulations, Nancy. There is a really nice picture actually in my brochure of her and the teachers dressed up in basketball uniforms. It's kind of cute. It'll be sent out tomorrow. Congratulations to Nathan Miller for being selected to apply to be a National Merit Scholar finalist. Nathan scored a 212 on the PSAT. Nathan also scored a 35 on his ACTs. Congratulations, Nathan. The high school has also started end-of-course exams. I would like to thank Mr. Riley and Mr. Mansky for all their hard work in getting the test room set up, the exams ready, and to make the area for the students to test and to be very conducive for the tests that they're about to take. I'd also like to thank Mr. Bergard for making sure the Wi-Fi and all the Chromebooks were ready to go for the testing. So thank you guys very much. My final thing is the 4 Club, trying to spread positivity in the building, have asked me every day if I would read a quote. So they provide me with a quote every day to be read on the announcements. Tomorrow's quote will be, if you want to lift yourself up, lift up someone else. Booker T. Washington.
Thank you. Ms. Farina.
All right, good evening, everyone. So our highlights from April, of course, yes, we're involved in state testing right now. And we're going to continue on with our extended learning program that started up again with our 3rd grade students. We had about 24 students who have yet to meet the retention provision of the 3rd grade reading test after the first administration in the fall and 1 administration at the Terra Nova. So we invited everybody in again for some extra help. We tried to, contact families with letters home, personal messages from teachers, phone calls from the office. We currently have 7 students participating, but thank you to Mrs. Sunderland and Mrs. Bobish for staying twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays for an hour to help our 3rd graders improve their reading skills to pass that test. We also had a yearbook cover contest this year. It took place in March. 11 students submitted their yearbook drafts. Covers were voted on by staff to narrow the field down to the top 5 covers. Students then voted the week after spring break to determine the winner. So special congratulations to Isabella Rosenberger, a 5th grader at GPS, who designed this year's yearbook cover. And also a special thanks to our other entries. Pastor Photography will be using all the covers, though, throughout the yearbook in various pages. Student Council continues to meet monthly to find ways to best support the students and staff of GPS. Most recently, under the direction of Ms. Beth Gurley, the students organized a pet drive from April 12th through April 21st. There will be parties for the top 3 classes. The students placed boxes out of each classroom door and made a plan to pick up items each day at 1:20. Student Council continues to help with announcements each day, as well as assist with pushing around the Eagle cart for students to cash in their hard-earned Eagle bucks. We also have our school counselor this year that we have 3 days a week, Mrs. Alyssa Herder. So her spring update, during the month of March and April, the counseling program held a lunch bunch focused on social skills. Students ate their lunch with Mrs. Herder while completing fun activities and learning important social skills such as finding things in common with others, making friends, looking from the perspective of others, apologizing, standing up to peer pressure, and giving compliments to others. The last session did conclude with a pizza party. Her next topic for lunch bunch will be self-control, and that's a topic that we continue to address daily throughout the school. Teachers will have an opportunity to refer students to this lunch bunch, and permission slips will be sent home. Mrs. Herder also goes around the building and does classroom guidance lessons. For the month of April, she's been focusing on coping skills. This topic was chosen based on data that she collected from a needs assessment sent out to teachers. Students will learn what coping skills are, as well as when and how they can use them. Also on the back of my report, those of you that have the hard copy, you can see the cover there. She drew that herself. It's beautiful. There's a picture of Isabella there with it, and then there's all the, there's everyone that submitted a cover down at the bottom. So she's extremely creative. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hrina, Madam President, I have a question concerning your first paragraph. It seems as though you did your due diligence making sure everybody knew about the extended learning on Tuesday and Thursday?
Yes.
Letters, personal messages. What do you attribute only 7 students participating in it in?
Sometimes it's transportation. A lot of parents work, and we have several students that we bus to the local daycares. And so there's no way for the students to be picked up by 4:15 because many of the parents don't get off until later in the evening. So that's why they send their kids to daycares. Or they have to bus students home because they're working and there's older siblings there. So transportation is definitely a barrier for parents.
So is there a better way to do this? Do you have is there a better way that you can think of that we can offer extended learning?
If we would, transportation, I know districts do provide transportation. I know we provide it in the summer, and that seems to help. But this is something during the school year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for asking that. It definitely is a barrier.
Mrs. Doherty.
Good evening, everybody. I will not be as eloquent as Mr. Mullihan, but Cork Elementary, and I want to read because this just recently happened. Cork Elementary had an incident as well this morning due to a potential threat reported. A soft lockdown was instituted as a safety precaution until the situation could be assessed. The situation was assessed and the threat was unfounded. A soft lockdown is called when it's necessary to remove student traffic in the hallways, but students and teachers are still in their classrooms working. We are going to continue to be diligent and overcautious, as Mr. Mullihan said, because our students are our #1 priority. And I hope everybody understands that that is true. The staff reacted immediately and performed at their best. The students as well. And this really is proof that our safety drills do work. Everybody stepped up to the plate. Authorities were contacted right away. Thank you, Officer Cooper, for being right there. So I am really grateful to everybody that I work with because they know what they're doing. So I just wanted to get that out. And again, we always want to improve, especially in that area, because it is so vital and important to us. So thank you. We are also getting ready for testing and finding places to test our small group students. Teachers have been working hard since day one. We start off on that. And the students as well, they are ready. And we keep telling them, show what you know. You've been working very hard. But my reports, I like to report some fun things happening because kids do have fun at school still. Sometimes it's hard to remember that. But On St. Patrick's Day, both classes were met in kindergarten with chaos in the classroom. It was a mess, caused by a sneaky leprechaun. When students returned from recess, their classrooms, like I said, were a mess. Green water was in the bathroom, in the toilet. Glitter was everywhere. Furniture was out of place, and a lot more. The students really had a lot of cleaning to do, and they were in a happy, fun uproar about it. So the teachers did a great job with that. The students had some cleaning up to do. To make things better, parents donated green snacks. The kids loved trying some new foods and eating veggies like celery, cucumbers, fruits, honeydew, kiwi, green apples, and of course, green Jell-O with whipped cream. The students couldn't stop talking about it all day. So, I heard a best day ever. So they really planned a lot of fun stuff for them. And they had to bring me down and, can you believe this? So it was quite entertaining. Both fifth grade classes have entered the Junior Achievement Competition to create a new pizza for Pizza Joe's. I don't know if you recall, but Mrs. Kirk's class did this last year, and it was a great success. The students all worked together in a group, they're in groups, to develop their toppings and what kind of pizza they want to sell. So it is career activated as well. And they have to come up, research the cost of all the items in there. They have to think about their process, thinking about the target market. Again, research costs, how much to charge customers, and come up with a name for their pizza. And that's not all. They also have to create a 1-minute video advertising their pizza. And they came up with some wonderful different ideas last year, so I am excited and can't wait till when they complete that. So it's great for them to be connected with Junior Achievement as well. So great job, fifth grade teachers. Art class in Mrs. Simmons' class, plenty of hands-on creativity happening there. Fifth graders sculpted and painted pinch pot creatures. First grade made their own beads and earth medallions and created Earth Day necklaces. Third graders made Earth Day jacket pins out of Model Magic. Lots of fun, creativity, and good discussion. And I would like to commend Mrs. Simmons because she is always looking to connect her lessons with things that are happening in the classroom, with our standards that we need to be teaching as well. So, and it is a nice break for them with all of their hard work that they're doing. Speaking of Earth Day, our Word Hands will be back again this Friday. They donate a tree to us. They've been doing it the whole time I've been a principal, so that's many years. And they continue to do that. We look forward to it every year. And kids go right home and plant their trees. I think this year we're getting lilacs. So. And speaking of the Word Hands, the Easter Bunny visited. That was another fun activity before our break. But the big thing was that I just want to comment on, we did have high school students in helping. They're going to help us cover some windows, decorate. And they were so excited to see the Easter Bunny, they had to drop everything and go down and visit. So just remember, we are still always kids, no matter what. We do have a set time of year for some programs. We're anxiously awaiting our future programs that are being held at Cork. Parents and families are invited to a second grade student performance on May 4th. May 17th, our first grade classes will be hosting a spring tea for their parents. May 22nd will be our fifth grade spring concert. They've been really practicing on their recorders. And May 24th, kindergarten students will be performing their Dream Big program celebrating their successes this year. Everyone is welcome. And then our PTO is working on our Family Fun Night. It's getting bigger each year, so we're looking forward to that. And there has been discussion of a dunk tank and somebody in particular being in that dunk tank. So we'll see how that goes, but we're looking forward to it. So thank you.
Mr. Riley.
Good evening, everyone. So from a district perspective, the district leadership team has been working feverishly over the last few months. We've gone through the process of finishing up the One Needs assessment, uploading it to the state. We're now in the process of uploading our One Plan documents, which is connected to all of our funding that we would receive at that level. So we have to make sure that it is completed by April 30th and that the buildings align with what the district is working towards and vice versa. I will not get into state testing because that has been talked about by each one of my colleagues. However, I have attached the schedule for the last few weeks of state testing for the board, but also would like to remind everybody that not only is the state testing going on, but the high school students, some of the students will be doing AP testing beginning on May 1st. So we have some students that we wish them nothing but the best of luck as they try to obtain the scores that they've worked so hard to get before the end of the school year, so they can receive some college credit should they need it moving forward. We did have a gifted competition with our winners from the What Does a Soar Like an Eagle Mean to Me essay contest. I'd like to thank Mrs. Metzler for serving as a judge of that. We had several students that participated. 2 students were selected. We had 1 in each grade band. Gabriella Cole from GPS, 5th grader, and Sophia LeBron, a 7th grader at the middle school, have both won. They're going to receive a prize pack from the library that has a couple of age-appropriate books for them, and I believe some other goodies that'll be in it. So principals are going to reach out to those students and their families tomorrow, and we'll set up a time to go to the library and collect those items. Finally, the Wellness Committee has been working through it. We did have this most recently. We had a second themed activity that was a fruit and veggie challenge, just to see how many fruit servings that we could all eat in a day. We did have 53 employees participate. 20 received a raffle prizes, which was an edible fruit arrangement that we delivered to them the Thursday before we went for the extended holiday break over Easter. So I know they were very grateful for that. And again, this is all part of a community I guess I would say a county-wide grant that we've been able to get. So that's how we're able to fund some of these items for the staff. We've had 48 staff members that have participated in both the first round and the second round. So I'm looking forward to seeing more staff members as we continue moving forward with that. And finally, my appreciation portion, I usually kind of point out a student or a parent or a colleague, a teacher here and there. This time, I had to struggle with it because everybody, staff-wise, whether you're administrative, classified, certified, I've seen so many acts of kindness over the last month. I've seen everybody pulling together with state testing. I've seen conversations that, well, what do we think we need to do here? Let's try this. Always in the best interest of the students, whether it is a lockdown, whether it is state testing, whether it is planning for a parent group to put on a field day, whatever it may be. I really think that this staff in the district collectively, phenomenal, working together. There is absolutely nothing that we cannot achieve. So I just want to thank everybody. I'm very grateful to be a part of this experience and look forward to finishing off the year with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Dave. So I have a number of things to report on this month as well. The first being our focus on literacy. We will certainly continue to focus on literacy and closing the achievement gaps. We have some exciting plans coming for students to get books in the hands of students. We heard Mrs. Milliken Dixon talk about that in her report. It's something that the governor is obviously pushing as well. So more to come on that in May. Also working on some things to prevent the summer slide when it comes to math and language arts. So again, we'll be revealing more of those details at the next meeting. Mrs. Porcello talked a little bit earlier this evening, if you were here for the first portion, on the possible addition of another autism unit. So we currently have 1 unit in the district at Cork due to the number of incoming number of students that will need to be placed in an autism unit. We have outgrown the 1 unit. And so we have been in conversations, again, as she mentioned, and potentially looking to open another unit and house this one at the middle school. I posted some updates and information in regards to the bus inspection and updates on that, so I can happily report that we have all buses back on the road to transport students. I can't thank the transportation department enough, especially our bus supervisor, Shar, and our sub-mechanic, Tony, along with the other personnel for their efforts over the past few days, because it has definitely been a team effort to make that happen. Just an update on our strategic plan, as I've been trying to report on this each board meeting. Each of our 4 committees continue to move forward towards the creation of the 3 to 5 goals that they are working on that will cover a 3-year plan. Some of the groups have already formulated some goals, others have narrowed their ideas and are getting to the point of writing their goals. But again, the hopes to complete that in June. Rite of passage, if you recall, we had 4 students last year, I believe, participate in the rite of passage, and they are trying to get that to grow in the community. So last year it was housed at Conneaut. This year PV is hosting it, I should say, and next year we will be hosting it. So they invite everyone to come out. It will be at PV's Veterans Memorial Performing Arts Center this year. It will take place on May 11th at 7 p.m. And this is an event that honors graduates for their commitment to a branch of service that they have chosen to make. So currently we have 2 seniors that have made a commitment to the Marines and potentially 3 more. Again, that's May 11th at 7 p.m. if you are able to attend to support and honor our graduates. Stronger Connections grant. This is a grant that I applied for. It's a competitive state grant. I applied for the amount of $82,962. This would go to support mental health initiatives and programs, welcoming new families to the district, increasing our partnership with community counseling, and expanding the families initiative that Mrs. Doherty talked about at Cork Elementary. I was very inspired by hearing what the staff there is doing with this concept of families. And so that kind of inspired part of the grant that I wrote for the state. I would also like to thank Mr. Riley for his input and help on that grant with me as well. And we have our Soaring Eagles, as we do every month. So at Austinburg, we had 3rd grader John Bernardo, chosen by Mrs. Stowell. And she noted that John takes piano lessons outside of school and used his talents during the Christmas program this year. He played the role of the piano player in Elf's band and even added playing a song on the keyboard during the performance. John is an active participant in class and leads by example, showing class expectations to other students around him. At Cork, Ms. Wilbur chose 2nd grader Caden Wilson, and she noted that Caden is soaring in 2nd grade. He was chosen for the great example he sets to students each and every day. He always follows directions and puts 110% into all he does. Caden is kind, patient, and helpful to his classmates. He is the first to offer someone help if they need it. I am very proud of Caden. He is a great example of what a soaring eagle is at Cork Elementary. And then at GPS, if you recall earlier, I said that the Austinburg Soaring Eagle was chosen by Mrs. Stowell. Ms. Farina nominated Ms. Stowell to be the Soaring Eagle for GPS. So it was nice to go in and surprise her. And Ms. Farina wrote that Lisa has spent time after school with 5th grade students listening to them play their recorders to earn their colored belts for recorder karate. She does this because she knows several students wait a little longer each day for their bus to arrive. Mrs. Stowell also organized 3 PBIS movie viewings during the last 2 days of school before spring break and still took classes to make sure that she saw them, knowing that the Friday after break is a day off school. Mrs. Stowell also does numerous school concerts throughout the year. She is a true professional, and I enjoy having her each week at GPS. At the middle school, Mrs. Mather chose 6th grader Alex Velasquez. Alex is an energetic student who gives 100% every day in class. He is kind and goes out of his way to make everyone happy. His smile is infectious. Alex sings from the heart, is a fantastic role model, and encourages other students daily. I'm especially excited and look forward to watching Alex grow as a musician and leader over the next 6 years. And last but not least, at the high school, Brian Allen, who is a freshman, was chosen by Mrs. Dragon. And she noted that Brian is always here at school, is quiet, and gets the job done. He does not work to be noticed, but from a teacher's point of view, he is hard to miss. Brian is the first to raise his hand to answer a question and is very rarely ever wrong. We have been working to get ready for the Ohio State testing in biology. Brian has excelled in every practice we have done. I want to give him a proper shout out for how proud I am for all of his hard work this year. And lastly, I know that both Mr. Mollahan and Mrs. Doherty talked about the 2 lockdowns that we had in each of their buildings over the last week. And I just want to reiterate some of the sentiments that they said, that we will certainly always err on the side of caution. But I also want to note, we will never be able to communicate faster than you will see things on social media. Unfortunately, what's getting posted on social media is not accurate information, so I would caution you.
Terri, your mic's out.
I would caution you when you're reading it. As soon as we can get the information out, we will. Our first priority, as both of them stated, is the safety of our students and staff and to make sure that everyone in the building is safe. Certainly, we assess the situation. We work with law enforcement to do so. And once we feel that has been done, then we will absolutely put the communication out to parents. I know that in both cases, there were things that were posted on social media that were not accurate about the situation that was actually happening. So again, I caution you, we will get the information out to you once we make sure that everyone is safe, as again, they said that is the top priority. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. I recommend the enclosed resolution confirming joinder to the Ashtabula County School Financing District and declaring it necessary to levy a renewal tax in excess of the 10 mil limitation.
I'll move.
Second.
Discussion?
This is the one that Mr. Candela talked about?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler?
Yes.
And Mrs. Milliken Dixon.
Yes.
I recommend that the board approve the following resolution, approving schematic design stage submissions and authorizing the design professionals to proceed with the design development phase for the board office addition to the Media Center project.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah, I have some questions.
Okay.
So in looking at the design estimate, I noticed that there were some areas where there was a flat price per square foot. So I'd like to know, is that estimated high? Is that 100% accurate? Is it estimated? I can't imagine that you would estimate it low, but I'd like to more or less know if it's estimated high.
What page are you on, Emma?
Well, I'm looking at page 4 of 6 and number 12. So the furnishings, the loose furnishings look like it's set up that way. The sprinkler system, the HVAC, it looked like it was general.
So on the furnishings, we haven't had an opportunity to design the furniture yet. Right now, we're focused on the building.
We can't, I don't think everybody can hear you.
Is this better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So initially, we designed the schematic design that encompasses the building, the earthwork, the utilities, that kind of thing. We're going to bid out the furniture package later. And what we did at this point was we didn't want to give an all-in estimate at this point without at least capturing some dollars in the budget for what we estimate the furniture to be. At this point, it's $10 per square foot, and at the building size of 5,260 square feet, that gives you 52,000 roughly. That could go up or down, but based on historical data and some projects that we've done recently, it's pretty accurate.
Okay. And so would you say the same in terms of like the sprinkler system and the HVAC and how those are estimated out by square footage as well?
Yeah, I would agree with that statement as well. So based on historical data, buildings of this nature, this size, school projects, those are square foot numbers that we would typically see and are seeing at this point in time as well with projects that have recently bid.
Okay. And then the other question that I have is, I didn't see a parking area. We talked about a parking area at a previous meeting. I understand that this is the schematic design. Is that why there's not a parking area in here, or are we just holding off on that?
So
It's on the last one.
last meeting in March, I think got a question from one of the board members about parking options. We designed 2 parking options and priced those on page 9, or the last page.
That was the really small page in our original?
Yes.
Okay, all right,
The
gotcha.
printed copy is a little easier to
Yep.
read. One of the parking options is closest to I'll say the east side of the access road, and the other option is on the west side along the access road. Both options have been kind of priced as an alternate.
Okay.
If funding becomes available, we'll work with the district to include one of those options.
Okay. Thank you.
Roll call?
Mr. Arndt,
Yes.
Ms. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
and Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes. I recommend a motion to accept the following new revised replacement policies for board adoption.
So moved. Second.
Is there any discussion? Roll call?
Ms. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
And Mr. Arndt.
Yes.
I recommend the board approve the following student as having met the requirements for early graduation for the 22-23 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
What is the intent of graduating early? What are the plans?
See his letter?
Yeah, he put it in his letter.
It's on the back.
Okay, thank you.
Roll call?
Mrs. Metzler,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
Mr. Arndt.
Yes.
And Ms. Fisher.
Yes.
I recommend that the contracts for the following administrators, directors, supervisors be renewed for 3 years to be paid according to the adopted administrators, directors, supervisors contract guidelines.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call?
Discussion? Do we
Oh,
discuss?
excuse me, discussion?
I'm sorry, Mrs. Ortiz, because I want to comment real quick. I did receive some concerns in emails, and I want you to know that I did hear them. I did not hear them in a timely enough manner to make any sort of discussion out of it among the board. So I just want to know that I did hear the concerns that I was told, but I didn't have enough time to sort of make any decision about that, so thank you.
Roll call?
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
Mr. Arndt.
Yes.
Ms. Fisher,
Yes.
and Mrs. Metzler.
Yes.
I recommend that the following administrator be hired on a 3-year contract to be paid according to the adopted administrative contract guidelines and subject to meeting certification requirements of the state of Ohio.
I'll move.
Second.
Discussion?
Same, oh, go ahead, Dr. Treharn.
I would say I wanted to note that Kent will be present at the May board meeting. His current position, he is a middle school principal in Columbus, and so he was unable to be here this evening, but he will be here for the May board meeting so that everyone can meet him. I'm very excited to have him. He brings a wealth of experience, 24 years experience in a variety of different capacities and a lot of strengths that I think will bode well with our administrative team and the middle school staff.
I also want to reiterate on this item as well that I heard concerns, and I appreciate that, so please keep them coming. I do hear you. Thank you.
Roll call?
Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
Mr. Arndt.
Yes.
Ms. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler,
No.
and Mrs. Milliken Dixon.
No.
The treasurer recommends the board approve the disposal of the attached list of assets as they are no longer of any use to the district. Some items will be traded in or sold at public auction.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Arndt.
Yes.
Ms. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes. I recommend the following personnel actions for the 22-23 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Ms. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
And Mr. Arndt.
Yes.
I recommend the following personnel actions for the 23-24 school year.
Move.
Second?
Just to note on this section, when you get down to section D, it's an annual procedure that's done. Some of it's because of funding and some of it's because they're not certified staff of the district. Is there any further information for that? That explains it. Okay. Any other discussion?
Thank you for saying that, Ms. Ortiz. I had a question about that too. Like why?
It's just the annual.
It's just a procedure.
Yep.
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Yep. Roll call?
Mrs. Metzler?
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
And Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Okay, item 11. I recommend the following volunteer coach for the 22-23 school year.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
And Mrs. Metzler?
Yes.
Okay, our next item on the agenda is the hearing of the public. The board has adopted bylaw 0169.1 to provide for 30 minutes of public participation at regular meetings of the board. Each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 5 minutes in duration, and no participant may speak more than once on the same topic unless others who wish to speak on that topic have been heard. All participants are expected to comply with the standards set forth in the board policy manual with regard to public participation. We will now begin the 30-minute period of public participation for today's meeting. And when you step up to the microphone, you'll need to state your name and address for the record, please.
Nancy Barbo, 224 Ruth Street, Geneva, Ohio. I come to you as both a concerned parent and an employee at Geneva High School. I've dedicated myself to this district with 30 years of teaching, 24 years of coaching basketball. My husband, John, is also a veteran teacher and coach here, and we have a son who is a sophomore in the high school. We chose to make a home in this community because of the schools, the people, and the unique qualities a small town like Geneva offers, and we have not been disappointed. But just like all school districts have room for improvement, Geneva is no different. So when Dr. Treharn was hired as our new superintendent, I believe the Geneva employees were ready and willing to work with someone that would move this district forward. However, the heavy-handedness with which change and progress have been attempted has only brought about stress, chaos, and negativity throughout our school district and community. Within the last 2 years, there have been many poorly handled situations that have led to these feelings, such as the negotiations which resulted in a teacher strike, the safety of the students during the strike, the high school library being stripped away from us, the financial issue related to our majorette coach, the choir trip that was almost canceled, busing issues, and employees placed on administrative leave, just to name a few. But I'm not here to rehash all of that. I'm here to discuss 2 pressing issues that continue to eat away at me. The first is with my friend and colleague, Matt Deering, who has been placed on administrative leave now for a total of 90 business days. This situation, in my eyes, has been handled in the most unprofessional, dysfunctional way possible. From the poor communication with all parties involved to the borderline inappropriate one-on-one interviews with female students. This entire investigative process has caused mental and emotional stress to both Matt and many of his students. Matt has been a faithful teacher and coach at Geneva for 25 years. Most of you, if not all of you on the board, know Matt in some way, some better than others. I cannot understand how you've allowed this process to continue in this manner. This is a man's life, reputation, and career you are dealing with, and being on paid leave does not make it acceptable. In addition, the education of the students in Mr. Deering's classes has been severely compromised, yet his students are expected to take the government state test in just a few days, and if the scores do not meet acceptable standards, the blame will be placed on administrators or anyone other than yourselves. This entire situation has truly sickened me, and Matt deserves better, and so do our students. The second critical issue that needs to be addressed is the new multi-million-dollar school board office that has been approved. Now, I know earlier you painted this very sad situation of our current board office, but this still needs to be said. At the last board meeting, Bonnie Cooper stood up here and asked you to take a step back from this and reevaluate, and I am urging you to do the same. And until ground is broken, you can stop this. As educators, the well-being and growth of our students should be the most important factor in every decision the superintendent and board make. With that in mind, millions of dollars are going to be spent, yet the educational and extracurricular opportunities for our students will go completely unchanged. How can you justify this kind of spending for a single office space for 12 individuals? Proceeding with the construction of this new board office will only create more mistrust, more negativity, and more disruption to the already volatile situation we have in this district. It will also completely destroy any likelihood of this district passing another levy to fund our schools in the future. One way to salvage relationships and regain some of the public's trust would be to put the brakes on this project and create a plan that will benefit the vast majority. Considering our athletes do not have a home athletic facility like every other school in Northeast Ohio, could this money be leveraged toward financing one? Our access to Spire is going to come to an end. What then? If you do not have this foresight for the school and community, then at least reconsider utilizing other available spaces for your office. And I know they're out there. Spending this kind of money at this time is not in the best interest of our schools or community. And I know some of you up there have the sense to see that. But do you have the strength to act on it and do the right thing?
30 seconds
Running
remaining.
a school district is not about making your day-to-day life better. It's about making our students' lives better. So please do your job. Put an end to this ridiculously long investigation of Matt Deering. Put the brakes on this multi-million-dollar school board office, and please start leading in a way that will make others trust you and want to follow you. Thank you.
Stacy Nesparenko, 4313 Gerald Road, Ashtabula,
I'm
Ohio.
sorry, one more time.
Stacy Nesparenko.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question. The new board office that we're going to be getting, how many people are going to be housed? Because earlier you said there is only 6 people in the house currently, and from what I know, there's 3 within our high school. 6, 7, 8, 9 people. Are you bringing more people to that building? I keep hearing 12 from back here, so $2 million for 12 people? Plus whatever else comes up. I just want to know how much we're spending on that. Thank you.
My name is Don Shimsky. I live at 37 East Tibbetts here in Geneva. I graduated from Geneva in the year 2000. I've been a teacher here in the Geneva Area City School District since 2004. While teaching here at Geneva, I've also coached multiple sports, and I'm currently the head football coach. Geneva is my home. It's where I choose to be, and unfortunately, things here haven't been the greatest the last few years. There are many things I feel need to be said. However, I will attempt to be concise in my statements in order to make sure the key points are made. Tonight, I'd like to talk about priorities. Unfortunately, I feel the priorities of the district have been off target and less than efficient. I'm hoping that my statements tonight help the board to recognize why I feel this way. The first item I'd like to talk about is Spire. I'd like to thank the board for not agreeing to the 25-year extension with Spire. I feel the priorities of the district's athletes and the priorities of Spire are on vastly divergent paths, and that something should be done to address this situation. While the board has chosen to prioritize a large financial endeavor like a new board office, where does it stand on a new athletic facility for our student athletes of Geneva? As someone that has coached both track and football for Geneva, I'm here to inform you that there are issues with our agreement with Spire that need to be addressed sooner rather than later. For example, I submitted my Spire usage dates for the 2023 season to Spire in the first week of January. I was informed today that there were 3 conflicts out of 8 weeks. In 3 out of 8 weeks, we will not be able to use their facility this summer, and that our football team couldn't be there at all. Why aren't our teams prioritized by Spire? 2 of the 3 weeks that we now cannot use the Spire facilities are our first weeks of practice. How am I supposed to cope with these issues and carry out a successful program? Don't our kids deserve better? especially for all the concessions the district has made for Spire. I understand that some feel the agreement with Spire is a great deal. However, I believe that you get what you pay for. We aren't treated well at Spire, we aren't prioritized, and this is simply the latest example. My question is, rather than devote such a large amount of money on a board office, why can't these funds be used to begin a process on our own athletic facilities? Rather than accommodate the tens of people that would benefit from a new board office, why not help hundreds, if not thousands, of future Geneva student athletes? I understand the need for a new board office. This isn't lost on me. But what are our priorities? And shouldn't the students come first? Things at Spire will only get more congested and more conflicts will arise. This is only my second year as head coach, and it's the second year that our kids have been displaced at the same point in time in the year, in that late July slot. Further on the subject of priorities, I'd like to discuss the staff investigations within our district. I understand that there are things I don't know. I understand that I might have incomplete information. However, I would ask the board to ask further questions about the recent investigations of staff members and why they haven't been prioritized. What could be taking so long? How and why would a staff member have been put on leave in any situation and that not be a priority of the district? Why would it take weeks or months to conduct interviews within this investigation? How is an investigation such as this even begun without knowing that staff members have been in the classroom on a consistent basis and can serve as a witness for the alleged allegations? Why were interviews rescheduled time and time again? When was the last time an interview was conducted? What else could possibly be so important? One investigation here at GHS dragged on for months and months, making it very difficult for students to learn the content in a tested subject, and more importantly, having a negative mental and physical impact on a beloved friend and colleague. If you truly had the best interest of the district in mind, you'd clear your schedule, move the investigation expeditiously. Does the board understand the negative morale and the impact that has resulted of this situation? Since the last board meeting, what new information has been discovered? Since the silence month and month is deafening. We're afraid of hanging out there to dry, and people are afraid of who's the next person that's going to be put on leave. Lastly, I would ask the Board of Education be open to communication with the staff here at Geneva and other stakeholders to seek our input. Sometimes 30 minutes at a board meeting just doesn't cut it. The wounds that have been inflicted upon the district from years past haven't healed. This has been a very tumultuous time in our district's history, and it's time we stop assigning blame, we stop trying to win an argument, and we seek solutions to the problems that plague our district. In a time of conflict and division, we need true leaders to seek solutions to these issues. I leave you with a quote from Douglas MacArthur. He said, "A true leader has the confidence to stand alone, the courage to make tough decisions, and the compassion to listen to the needs of others. He does not set out to be a leader, but becomes one by the equality of his actions and the integrity of his intent." Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name's Cheryl Kinney, 2511 Highland Avenue, Ashtabula. First, before I read my long written speech, I need to address something. When we came in here, you guys were discussing the ESSER funds. No.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't at that meeting. No. When we were discussing where we're going to place Kevin and his colleagues, this meeting. And we didn't know where we were going to stick them. Well, I'm going to let you know. At the beginning of, I believe, last year, we had our lovely Miss Percello. We hired her, and we stuck her in our conference room. Then we turned around, took her out of our conference room, and shoved her and her secretary into a closet. Okay? So I think our school has plenty of closets that we could stick some people's desks in and get them up and running to save $3,000 a month on a dilapidated building. With that being said, I will start my long speech. So my name is Cheryl Kinney, Vice President, Local 307. I've been asked to speak on behalf of OPSI Local 307, mainly in regards to the ongoing strife within our district. 23 years ago, I started in this district. It was declared the district to work for. Great wage, amazing insurance, yada, yada. Now, we are at a place, a homeless man on the corner of State Road last week was told that he could come to Geneva Area City Schools and get a job, so he wasn't homeless no more, and he literally said, No way am I going there to work. That's a joke. Seriously, was said. People everywhere read what is being put out there on the internet, through the telephone waves, everywhere. Whether it be truth, lies, or exaggerations, it's there. Look at Cork today. Poor delivery guy, Nichols delivering chemicals, is declared an intruder going into the building and is thrown on Facebook. Literally, he's an intruder. He's delivering chemicals. But it's on Facebook within a nanosecond that we have an intruder and it blows up and everything's chaos. Was that the board's problem? Administration? No. But it goes to saying that that's how fast information travels. Everybody sees what's going on in our districts. They know what's happening. They're not stupid. Dr. Treharn was quoted in the Star Beacon in February talking about if people would spend more time seeking the best interest in our students instead of trying to get rid of her, we would be in a different place. I have been also told that we have been labeled just disgruntled employees by board members. Hearsay? Possibly, but nonetheless, it is coming from somebody's mouth. Let me enlighten you on a few things. Yes, we would be in a very different place if things were different. Dr. Treharn and the board, if you actually listened and helped your staff, how amazing the school system would really be. Disgruntled employees, we go into those buildings every single day with a new purpose of teaching curriculum, love, respect, and many other morals that our children need. And we do that for the children. We don't do it because we're just bored. We are here for the children, but we are also here for a job. That's what we do. So how about you give us credit for such things instead of giving us labels and unfair terms placed upon us in the public? Come to our buildings. We can teach you these things. It is very possible. Come visit us. We will teach you how we are teaching our children. We are not disgruntled staff. We are staff that are burned. You all on this board have heard from not one, not two, not even just 20 people of many problems we are suffering from, and nothing gets done. Nothing. We are told that we are lying, and you're going to back everybody up that you want to back up. It's ridiculous. How many more people could possibly say the same thing over and over? You know what the definition of insanity is? Doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. You're not getting a different result as long as you stay stagnant. Transportation has been a hot topic. We have 29 buses, 2 trucks, 1 dump truck, and 3 vans that are to be maintained by an in-house mechanic. You all decided it was a smart idea now, this day and age, to fire our mechanic over things that could have been worked out. Could have been worked out.
30 seconds remaining.
When I started 23 years ago, we had 2 mechanics and 3 maintenance. Now we have 0 mechanics, 1 maintenance guy. We are asking someone to come with all these credentials, plumbing, carpentry, 5 years experience, so we can start you off at the whole whopping wage of $19 an hour. And after you put in 35 years, you will make a staggering $23.90 an hour, when everybody else is paying our diesel mechanics starting at 30.
Time is up.
Good evening. Jack Dubsky, 142 Lockwood Street, Geneva, Ohio. I have a prepared statement to read, but before I read this, I want to thank Mrs. Fisher, Mrs. Milliken Dixon, and Mrs. Metzler, and Mr. Lillie for paying attention to the first 5 speakers that got up here. Mr. Arndt, he gave us maybe 30 seconds of eye contact out of 5 speakers. I don't know what he's writing over there on his little notepad, but I may FOIA request his notes and find out. The only time I seen him look up in the crowd is when he was trying to intimidate one of the teachers over there that clapped loudly. Mr. Arndt, do we need to remind you, you work for us? Not much longer. I think you got, what, 2 years left? But you work for us. Please start taking us serious. Geneva for Change has a significant amount of time, has spent a significant amount of time seeking out those who no longer work for our district. We have asked these individuals 2 questions. Would you be willing to come to a board meeting and speak about your time here, and why did you leave? If not, would you be willing to prepare a statement for one of us to read at a meeting? Tonight, I am going to share a statement from Tom Kearns. I, Tom Kearns, came to Geneva Area City Schools in 2016 as the Director of Maintenance and Transportation. My family and I considered it an honor to serve my alma mater in this capacity. I had owned a successful construction company since 1998 and chose to put that all aside when I accepted an offer from GACS. I was praying that this was going to be my retirement job, and within a few months, I knew I made the right decision. I served my district for 5 years, and during that time, I built some awesome relationships with staff and community members. I had never gone through a superintendent change like many of my peers had, so I relied on them to guide me through the feelings that I was experiencing. I asked a lot of pointed questions to the superintendent that was retiring, like, what qualities do you see in me when you chose to hire me? What do you feel are my strengths? What weaknesses should I address? I want to help the new superintendent fit in right and let her know that I had my job under control. Within a few weeks of Terri starting, she met with me regarding the Clean Start interview that she wanted all employees to participate in. We had a very long meeting and had to schedule a second meeting. I expressed several issues that I felt needed addressed sooner rather than later. Our route supervisor, who you were giving another 3-year contract to, I'll add, our route supervisor was struggling and parents were very unhappy with transportation. Terri had me sitting in the route supervisor's office handling phone calls while our only maintenance guy was wearing himself out. It became very apparent that Terri was starting to make decisions based on her own wants and not listening to those who have already had experience. Terri came to my office, and I gave her a tour through the bus garage building. She started to attack the lead mechanic's abilities. I explained the route supervisor would have certain things regarding the mechanic, and Terri asked, why do I only protect the males in the department? I shared with Terri at this point that I have built a great working relationship with all female drivers and support staff through being trustworthy and fair. One particular incident with the lead mechanic showed me who Terri really was. Jay Miller had requested a sick day to take his significant other to the hospital and care for her. I approved the days and passed the form on. It was approved and the day came and went. I was asked why I approved it even though I knew that his significant other was not family by marriage. I explained that we had already went to arbitration over this and it was approved. The contract never changed during negotiations and we moved on. Terri and her receptionist asked me to change his form and make it a vacation day due to not being a family member. I had the mechanic make some changes to his form, but he didn't have vacation time available. He was willing to take whatever day they wanted, but
30 seconds remaining.
When they wanted to change the goals, the significant other not being a family member, she wanted me to write him up. There was a point where as she asked me something that was not truthful, I stated, I will not lie for you, and the facts are the facts, so write him up if you feel the need. With my 25 years of construction experience, I thought for sure that I would have been a part of a team regarding the board office plans. The superintendent, her receptionist, and building operations manager had been meeting and making decisions on how to move forward.
Time us up.
All right, can I get back in line and finish this?
Madam President.
My name is Sarah Albee. I live on Foreman Road in Austinburg.
I didn't hear your name.
My name is Sarah Albee. I live on Foreman Road in Austinburg. I would like the board and the district to start recognizing the ATEC students, please. Time and time again, those kids are ignored by the district. On April 6th, there was an NHS induction ceremony and not one representative from Geneva was there. Not one, not a board member, not a principal, vice principal, counselor, nobody. And there were several students from Geneva inducted, and no one was there for them. It is a constant thing between the district and ATEC. It's like once the kids leave, it's, oh, well, you don't want to be part of Geneva anymore, and they're ignored, and it's not right. And there needs to be something done with that. There's never anything posted on the district website about the accomplishments those kids at ATEC make. And they work their butts off in there. And it is hard to get on NHS. Everybody thinks ATEC's a cream puff place to go. It's not.
They have a lot of stuff to do, and they miss out on stuff because a lot of those programs do not use Chromebooks exclusively like Geneva does. A lot of those kids, they don't go to breakfast in the morning, and the early placement kids don't go to lunch, so they don't get the announcements that flash on all the TV screens in there. And those kids need that, and by the time they find out something's gone on, they've missed it. Please include the ATEC kids and stuff more. Thank you.
Thank you.
The principal knows about it, the high school principal.
Stephanie McNeil, 80 Telling Drive, Geneva, Ohio. I'm coming to you as a concerned teacher. I have begged for support from Terri, Dave, and Julie Farina for months regarding a severe behavior issue in my classroom that is affecting the safety of my students as well as our building staff. All of this has fallen on deaf ears. Board policy is flagrantly being violated to date. 4 police reports and 4 formal complaints have been filed concerning this issue. I have been told to set up a Zen zone and try interventions that are meant for beginning of the year behaviors. This is a severe safety concern. Are you aware of the complete lack of support and concern that is happening daily in regards to this ongoing issue? What is it going to take for administration to step up, support us, and take our safety concerns seriously?
Hello, Amber Lamphere, 496 West Liberty Street, Geneva, Ohio. My student is one of the kids in her class. So these are the questions I have for the board. It is the responsibility of the schools to provide a safe learning environment for every student. There is a zero tolerance policy against bullying and violence. However, this is untrue at GPS. My child, who's in 1st grade, is having problems with another child in his class. This child has choked her best friend in front of her, sitting right there. Right there, that child right there. Her other children on the program at recess makes repeated violent threats to her, both other students and teachers. My child's teacher and principal have done everything they physically can, but from my understanding, the superintendent will not allow them to send this child to Building Bridges, which is a school set up to help kids that have these behavioral problems, suspend or expel this child. I do agree and understand that every child should have an education, but I also believe that every child should not be in fear going to school. Should the 1st graders in my class be so scared to go to school that they are getting tummy aches, headache, and just asking, why is he allowed to hurt me? Why is he allowed to choke my best friend? Why is he allowed to hurt my teacher? I cannot answer these questions for my child. Can you please answer them for her? Can you also explain how this fits in the zero tolerance policy against bullying? When I met Ms. Treharn, I went in and talked about the student that was hurting other students in my daughter's class. Ms. Treharn informed me that she had no idea about this happening, that the other children was hurting the other kids and this was going on, but that child had a right to an education. Ms. Treharn informed me of the no violence policy, and if my child retaliated or defended herself, she would have to follow that policy against my child. But this child can choke other children and still come to school. So let's talk about being choked. I have an older son that's in karate, so I've learned all this. When you are being choked, you cannot scream. You cannot breathe. You cannot make a sound. Your arms, you have nothing. After you're choked for 3 minutes, brain damage can start. Longer than that, you can end up dead. My child lives in fear of going to school. This child's going to do this to her. And she's not allowed to defend herself, try to get away. All she can do is tell a teacher, but she cannot talk. So what's my child supposed to do in 1st grade?
Let's hear it. Get Jamie. We have 2 minutes left in the 30 minutes.
Okay.
Michelle Craig.
One second, Michelle, sorry. The last lady in line will be our last speaker. We only have 2 minutes right now, but each person standing there right now will have the 5 minutes. Thank you.
Michelle Craig, 200 Cherrywood Circle, Geneva. I have a few items I would like to address this evening. Number one, in regards to Spire and the board offices. Spire has deeper pockets with this new ownership group. So if they do not want us there, they will make our lives miserable. Here is what you should have done with some of the money instead of building a board office. Planned out a sports facility. You could have had a football stadium separate from a track stadium similar to what Conneaut has. You could have built the track and put turf on the infield for practices. You could have had a small amount of bleachers and a reasonable scoreboard and maybe had underclassmen football and soccer games there. It would be a project that would be ramped up as time and money allowed. This could most likely be done, phase one, as outlined here for around 1.5 mil. Without frills, no locker rooms, etc. Use the high school and work with what you have right now. You could have purchased the Pairings property for $750,000 as originally suggested, and more or less had enough to do this too. But you have to think creatively to do that. Number two, in regards to the first grade student at GPS, serve this child, as well as the other children in that classroom, and do one of two things. Either put them on home instruction until one, a behavior plan that includes a one-on-one aid is in place, or a placement in an SBH unit, which stands for Severe Behavior Handicap, unit is found. This is a lawsuit waiting to happen. Serving children means placing them in appropriate settings that meets all of the educational needs. Again, one child's least restrictive environment should not become the 17 other children in that class their most restrictive. Number three. Lastly, I have information from a newspaper article I wish to share. The article discussed the mutual parting of the ways between a school superintendent and a local board of education. It is apropos because I'm seeing a lot of parallels between what the article outlined for that district and what I'm witnessing here. Here's a summary. Parting between the board and superintendent was mutual and for the best interest of the district. The board all, this is a quote, the board all believes that the actions we are taking here today are done with the best interest of the school district and our students in mind. A public record request of a performance evaluation noted these items. Professional characteristics of honest and trust are written with words of, quote, concern and needs improvement. Needs improvement with cooperation and insightful puts off difficult decisions until it blows up, wrote the evaluator. The board feels that better communication is needed. The board feels that the superintendent is doing a good job, but we feel like we're uninformed at times. The article went on to discuss that the superintendent had a couple of years left under contract. Rather than termination, the board elected to move the incumbent superintendent into another administrative role. A board member was quoted in the article that they went this route to avoid potential costly litigation. It's important to understand that the accord we worked out with the superintendent was a mutual one and was reached in good faith to resolve our differences in a way that was beneficial to all concerned. Given the state of the Geneva Area City School District under the direction of what can only be characterized as the underperforming leadership of Dr. Treharn, I urge this board to use this outline as a template to stop now and make a change. It is time to go in a new direction and find a new effective superintendent. By the way, this article should be familiar to this board if it did proper and effective due diligence in hiring. This article is from the Salem News on July 26, 2015, regarding the board meeting at Beaver Local Schools. The superintendent in question is Mr. Kent Poland, whom you have just hired to be the new principal at Geneva Middle School. And you all have given him a 3-year contract. Have you learned nothing? Why would you do this after noting a work history that has him all over the state, lackluster evaluations, and currently commuting from Cuyahoga Falls to Columbus twice a week for employment because he is no one's first choice, but we gave him 3 years? But I am sure that you all already know this, right? Great choice.
Hello, I'm Tammy Sabin, 212 Cherrywood Circle, Geneva. I'm addressing the board this evening as a concerned parent, concerned teacher, and a concerned community member. There are many reasons that GATA, OPSI, and this community have all issued votes of no confidence in Dr. Treharn. However, it seems as if the board is not hearing us. We keep hearing what a great job Dr. Treharn is doing, and even Jamie Ortiz said in a meeting that our vote of no confidence was a vote of confidence for Dr. Treharn. That was a slap in the face that continues to show us there is no respect for us teachers. The state of affairs for Geneva schools is not well. We have teachers out on extended paid administrative leave with no end in sight. We've had OPSI members out on paid administrative leave. We have teachers and administrators who can't leave fast enough. And I know what you will say, there's a national teacher shortage. And we do not disagree with you. However, we have administrators and teachers who have left and are continuing to leave our district to go to other districts. Districts that treat the professionals in their buildings as such. Districts where teachers, administrators, and staff do not have to walk on eggshells and live in fear of being, quote, the next. Districts who give their professionals continuing education units, which every other district in our county does, except ours, and the list goes on. So this national teacher shortage that we keep talking about is a very real thing, but it isn't the main problem that this district is experiencing. Qualified, experienced staff are running away from our district and into the arms of districts who respect and treat their staff like the professionals that we are. I was personally told by a former employee that had said he would definitely consider coming back if Dr. Treharn was no longer here. Her presence continues to plague this district, and I cannot believe the board is blind to it all. The destination district of yesterday has now become infamous to those near and far. We are told by professionals across Ashtabula and Lake County and beyond that they read the newspapers and watch the news. They know what awful things we all in Geneva are up against. How on earth are we supposed to attract the best qualified to apply here when we can't even get those who already have and are proven to be amazing to stay? Think about it. That's not a teacher shortage problem. It's a leadership problem or lack thereof. Going back to continuing education units, I took part in a meeting that took place amongst the board, GATA members, and Dr. Treharn. We explained that every school in the county gives these to their employees, which was confirmed by the ESC. We explained how, again, this is another display of how the superintendent does not respect our time, and explained that teachers would have to go and seek additional training with usually a high price tag in order to renew their license. Literally, we can take the exact same training on a Saturday afternoon, pay for it, and receive credit for it, but because we took it on a Friday afternoon, we received no credit towards renewing our license. Dr. Treharn clearly doesn't value our time. We have to seek continuing education credits on our own. Let me repeat, we are the only district in the county not receiving credit for our training for our in-service. Another leadership issue is Dr. Treharn knowingly leaving the 7th and 8th grade ELA classes without a curriculum. We aren't even eligible to get a curriculum that matches the standards until the 2024-2025 school year. So under Dr. Treharn's watch, she knowingly left a tested subject without a curriculum that matches the standards for 3 years. But she claims testing is really important to her and that she's here for the students. However, if she was here for the students, she would allow the buildings to continue with creating their testing schedule that best meets the needs of the students instead of implementing her own schedule. Again, teachers were once treated as trusted professionals and left to create these testing schedules that were in the best interest of our students, which is not a Monday morning when every person knows, educator or not, is the worst day of the week to test kids. Next, building safety at GPS has been a serious issue all year. Students are in danger, teachers are in danger, board policy is being violated, ORC is being violated, and administration is doing nothing. In fact, Dr. Treharn was begged to go and see what was taking place in a specific classroom, neglecting her duty and ignoring the seriousness of the situation as she turned and walked away. Besides all of this, the bus debacle, the record-breaking number of grievances, the lavish, extremely expensive, over-the-top board office, the inability to take accountability, and the list goes on of very serious concerns.
30 seconds remaining.
Our district is crumbling. Board members, please open your eyes, take the masses' vote of no confidence seriously, and take immediate action. Thank you.
Christy Burns, 4262 North County Line Road. Okay, so there's a couple things I would like to say. First and foremost, I am so thankful that you took a moment to question the price on the square footage of furniture. $52,000 is what I believe I heard. $52,000 for furnishing for our board office. I'm sure that you guys are not aware that there was a purchase order put in for our children for just a few beanbag chairs. Just a few beanbag chairs. And that purchase order was denied. So when you're thinking about what you're sitting in that board office, I hope you see what is being denied to our students. These students, I can speak for because my child is in this class. We talk about how important it is to take the emotional well-being of our students, right? Getting all these grants, writing for them, doing all this stuff. You know the class that wanted the 2 beanbag chairs? That happened to be for our emotionally disturbed students. How do I know that? Because my child is in that classroom. When they go into a cool down room, they have to sit on the floor. So as each item was crossed out on the list, deciding, not from the teacher, not from the person that you hired because you believed that they knew best for their students, those items were crossed out on this purchase order. No questions asked. So as you get $52,000 worth of furniture, I can only hope that I see beanbags in that classroom in the near future because it is a calming area for the child to calm down for. Number 2, my child was not able to go to school last week because there was no transportation. This is huge to me. I took the job at this district knowing that my children who are younger were going to be able to get to school. I can't leave my job here to go get my children to take them to school. My husband's work schedule does not allow him to bring the kids to school. So my kids had to stay home, which also meant that we lost wages that day. When things are changed at the very last minute, not only does it create chaos for the parents, but the kids have no clue what bus they are going home on. No clue. And our administrators in our buildings do the absolute very best that they can with the information they're given. It's still not enough. Changing things at the very last moment, I understand things happen, there's shortages, something breaks. When it repeats on a daily basis, that's a problem. But we gave 3 more years to the person who is in charge and running that. Something is broken. Let's just keep doing the same thing. Third, my child, first grader, was in the first class that the young student that we have discussed tonight, many parents, many teachers. My child was in the first class. This child was removed from one class to put into another. Because of this situation, my child has not had a teacher. My child has not had a teacher now for quite a while. 13 weeks, my child, first grader, were so big into learning reading, writing, doing all this stuff, and she does not even have a teacher. So when you wonder why last month at the board meeting, I wanted to get up and speak before I was gavelled out, that is why, because I am worried about the kids in this district. I'm worried about my kids who can't get to school. When they get to school, they're not in a safe classroom and does not even have a teacher. So please, please, I am begging you. I am begging you to please do something. These teachers are trying to protect these kids and they're getting in trouble for it. And it's got to end. Something has to happen to help our school and our teachers feel safe.
Good evening.
I'm sorry, it's her opportunity to speak now.
My name is Liz Penna. I am the president of the Ashtabula National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. When we say colored people, it doesn't mean black like it did 100 and some years ago. It's for all people who have had injustice done, discrimination, racial torture, kids not being able to have the education that they are promised. First, I want to commend this audience. I have never seen such a group of passionate parents in my life. You need a hand. I see nothing but strength here, but when I look over here, I don't see it. I don't see it. I'm going to go off track. I have a letter that I want to read. On 2 occasions, January 18th and on March 15th of this year, students and parents have stood in front of this board sharing their concerns on racial harassment that's occurred in the Geneva Middle School. It is our understanding, when I say our, that means our NAACP association and branch, that the policy of the Board of Education is to maintain an education and safe work environment that is free from all forms of unlawful harassment. Now, according to your Anti-Harassment and Bullying Report number 1662, it reads, the board will investigate all allegations of harassment, and in those cases where unlawful harassment is sustained, the board will take immediate steps to end the harassment, prevent its reoccurrence, and remedy its effects. All students, administrators, teachers, staff, and all other school personnel share responsibility in avoiding, discouraging, and reporting any forms of unlawful harassment. Then you have a policy that goes race, color harassment, policy number 5517. It indicates that prohibited racial harassment occurs when unwelcome physical, verbal, or nonverbal conduct is based upon an individual's race or color, or when the conduct has the purpose or effect of interfering with the individual's work or educational performance, of creating an intimidating, hostile, or offensive and/or learning environment, or interfering with one's ability to participate in or benefit from a class or in an educational program or activity. Such harassment may occur where conduct is directed at the characteristics of a person's race or color, such as racial slurs, nicknames, implying stereotypes, epithets, and or negative references relative to racial customs. I've been working with several parents in this district. I have met with the parents. I have met with the superintendent. The Geneva Middle School and students have reported cases of name-calling, racial identity, racial profiling, and comments about their hair texture, their skin color. These occurrences have created an intimidating and hostile educational environment for these children. Some parents are fearful of sending their children to school for fear of retaliation to their children. According to your policy handbook, the board policy states that it would investigate all allegations of harassment, and in those cases when unlawful harassment is sustained, the board will take immediate steps to end the harassment, prevent its reoccurrence, and remedy its effect. This communication will serve as notice that the State of Ohio National Association for the Advancement of Colored People will coordinate an open and public investigation of this matter and will consult with the national office to ensure that the students' civil rights will be protected and to address issues related to the State Board of Education's protection under the whole child.
That brings us to the other portion of our meeting. Amber, you said you wanted to start with that.
Sure. So most months I report on my visits to the schools, And last month I did not get that opportunity, so I have a couple of months to catch up on. But before I start with my most recent visits, I wanted to mention I had reported on my visit to GPS, not last month, but the month before, and there was one important piece of information that I didn't share, and that was my conversation that I had with the community counseling counselor, Ms. Friday, and the endeavor that she is working with Officer Cooper on in that school, where they are going into the lunch times of the students, and in this case, it was the kindergartners' lunch period, and they were going in, taking their time, volunteering their time, and they were really trying to talk about, in this case, rules. They were trying to hit on the important things about treating people right and kindness, and in this particular case, it was rules. And they were coming to it from the law side with having Officer Cooper there, and also the school side with having Ms. Friday there. So I neglected to say that, and I wanted to get that out there because I think it's a fantastic idea to sit down with the kids during lunch. It's a much more relaxed atmosphere. They might be more willing to share, and they might be more willing to actually listen during that time. And we all know that our kids need that type of information relayed to them multiple times for it to actually stick. In February, I did visit Cork. And I will make this brief because I do have a couple of visits, but I visited Cork, and I started off the morning in the in the kindergarten classrooms with Mrs. Cinco and Mrs. Ellis, and I had never had an opportunity to visit Mrs. Ellis's classroom, and I just was very impressed with both of them. I'd visited Mrs. Cinco's before, and I will say that the two of them combined work so well together as a team, making sure that their students are getting the same lessons and the same type of just education in general. When I was in there, they were both doing their morning meetings, so they were looking at calendars, the days, the dates, they're working with numbers. And it was just, and their classrooms are set up in such an engaging way, and they're bright, and no child can help but to be engaged in those classrooms. Those two teachers do a fantastic job. I went to Mrs. Bordeaux's class, a third grade class, and they were some of the students that I visited in December where they were giving their book commercials. So they had read books and they performed a commercial, and I went and I watched the commercials. Well, they sent me thank you notes during School Board Appreciation Month for coming, and they asked me some questions. So I wanted to make sure I went into that classroom to give them the opportunity to ask me those questions, and so we spent an hour with the third graders asking me questions about the role that I serve on this board. You know, why did I want to be on the board? What do I do? What are my responsibilities? And they had some really, really good questions. And like I said, it was an hour's worth of questions, so I was really pleasantly surprised. I didn't really know what to expect, but I was really happy to be invited there and happy that we were engaged in that conversation. I visited Mrs. Schrader's first grade classroom. She was working on math instruction using the smart board. And I went into Mrs. Espanic's classroom. She's in the autism unit. I had visited her before. I just kind of stopped in to just kind of get an update on how her classes were going. And I went into Mrs. Stowell's fourth grade class of music. And I had never been in a music classroom when I visited the classes before, but they're 30-minute classes, and these particular students were singing and had the music education with the reading book, where they, at this point in February, they were learning about African American spiritual music. So that was my visit at Cork, and then in March I visited the middle school, and I went on kind of the tour of the special education route again. And so I visited the emotionally disturbed unit with Mrs. White, and I talked to her for quite a bit and kind of understood what her classroom does and how she teaches the students. And she mentioned that she handles the language, art, and math in that class, but they actually will leave that classroom to go to their specials with their peers. And that as they're sixth graders, they get a little bit more support, but as they grow and they're seventh and eighth graders, she encourages more independence as they're starting to get older and head into high school. And she promotes ATEC very strongly with some of these students because that is a path that they could very well be happy with following. I went into the developmentally delayed unit with Ms. Intihar, and that is a unit that is in that building through the ESC. And so that makes it a little different than some of our other units. But I had a pretty lengthy conversation with her. She's got 4 students in that classroom right now. She can have up to 8, and her students go to specials, and her students could also be older or younger than middle school. Just depends on the ages of the students in those classrooms. And the core subjects are taught in that class by her, and she's got an 8 in there as well. I visited the intellectual disability room. I had to do that on a different day because I ran out of time. And Ms. Koss was very informative to me. I didn't have any previous experience in that classroom. And that's, again, one where she handles she'll take care of life skills, ELA, and math in that classroom, and those students will actually transfer out of that classroom for science and social studies with an aide. So we had some really good conversation around how her classroom is run and what her students, the services that they get. I talked to Nurse Christie during that visit as well, and we had good long conversation about the needs of our students and some of those special needs of our students, where we talked about diabetics and seizure action plans and safety plans. So we had good conversation around that. And I had conversation with Mrs. George, and the counselor at the middle school, and we talked about the behaviors before COVID, the behaviors since COVID, some of the things that we've talked about in these board meetings in the past, and how the wish would be for more counselors in our schools. And I agree with her 100%. And I also finished up my time there with a pretty good conversation with Ms. Lamers, and just on the state of the school and what things are going on with the students and the staff there, and how good they are and how well they work together. So I, once again, sincerely appreciate being welcomed into the classrooms, into the schools, by the teachers, by the staff, by the administration. It's very enlightening to me. It helps me make decisions, and I look forward to continuing those visits.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I have some too, Mrs. Ortiz.
Okay, go ahead.
I've also been to a couple of schools this month. I went to Cork as well, and Mrs. Doherty and I had a great conversation. It was Mrs. Christy Blood, who invited me to go to there, and Miss, you have to help me, I forget the name of the classroom. It's Mrs. Nelson. But what is it called? What's its label? Okay, so it's a specialized behavioral unit, and it reminded me very much of, I'm sorry, Sherry Rooney was also there, she's the aide. So it was Mrs. Blood and Mrs. Nelson and Ms. Rooney, and they welcomed me and they showed me the ropes of how this classroom worked. And it reminded me very much of my mom's classroom when I was a child in the 80s, 1980s. She had these kids coming and going. At the time, they called it learning disabilities and behavioral disorders back in the day. And it reminded me of that, and it made me wonder if we should still be doing the things that we were doing in the 80s. Maybe it's because they work, but maybe it's time for a little bit of adjustment, because so the children come in and out, and some children are there all day, and some are just there for specific areas and specific times. And that creates such chaos that they only get 90 minutes a day to do all the core classes for the students who need that, who get those courses in that room. And to squeeze in 90 minutes, right, and then there's music that day, which is also vitally important, as you know, I know. So the child gets pulled for music, so they lose a half an hour. And then the child gets pulled for this, and the child gets pulled for that. And so I would like us as a board and as an administration to look at that better and see if we can't specialize those units better so that it serves the children better than I think is currently going on. The other thing that Mrs. Blood shared with me is pictures of the flooded playground. And I didn't get a chance to talk to this with Mrs. Doherty, so I apologize, but I know that we're having struggle with maintenance and things, but it's an unsafe playground when there's such a division between the dirt part and the mulch part, and it's a hazard. Someone's gonna get hurt. But I want to thank those ladies. We had such a great time that day, and the kids ended up all loving me when I left, And it was really, really great, and I appreciate them allowing me in there. I went to the middle school, and I met with Ms. Lammers. And we had a great, great discussion as well. And she is such an asset to our district, I can't even tell you. She's amazing. She is so dedicated to these students. And I just wanted to thank her publicly for having a great conversation with me and for being so dedicated and so effective in her position. Lastly, on a personal note, some of you know that my brother passed away in March, and the board sent flowers to his celebration of life, and I just wanted to thank them for that. So thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you. Okay, the Ashtabula County Educational Service Center is having an Ashtabula County Board Member Professional Development Night on Wednesday, May 10th at ATEC in B Building. So wanted to discuss who plans to attend so that we can properly create the notice and everything that we legally have to do for that.
I'm planning to attend.
Okay.
I am too.
I am.
Mr. Arndt, okay. I believe all 5 of us will be attending. What do we need to do to make that all correct?
It's professional development, it's not a meeting, so you've announced your attendance and it will be handled as professional development.
Okay.
We don't have to have a motion that we can go or anything like that?
No, just needs to be reported.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there any other?
Other?
No. Okay. I recommend the board hold an executive session to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler?
Yes.
And Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.